As a formality, my name is Dean Mico. I run a financial planning business called Edge 7 Financial, as you can see, and again I'd like to welcome you. As a bit of a disclaimer, what we're going through tonight is some building blocks to wealth, so hopefully you can see some areas in your life that you're doing really well, and perhaps some areas in your life that might need some attention or to work on to improve your circumstances. And just as a matter of formality, just a disclaimer that this presentation is based on for general advice only, not taking into account your personal circumstances in delivering this content. But in saying that, I'm happy for you to ask questions. Let's get into it. So the building blocks to wealth. I'll just quickly run through who I am, how I've come about. Yes, I said 7 Financial. I'm an independent financial planner. Personally love investment properties and shares. I don't love them completely. I love them because they're a vehicle to get us to where we want to go, which is to retire as early as possible with as much money as possible, and then in retirement to live off that passive income so that you can go play golf, do gardening, go off their money during the GFC, and these financial planning experts didn't even do anything to stop it happening. That's when I thought, you know what, I can do something that's going to add value to people. I can do it better than these so-called experts. So that was really what struck a chord with me, and it's still there today, and I think it'll be there forever. So building blocks to wealth. I consider that residential property is the foundation to your wealth. Owning your own home is very important, and I'll get to a reason why in a moment. And with property, the trend is your friend. This is a chart from AMP Capital. It goes back about 100 years. And despite the property cycles of the bull markets and bear markets, you can see that the trend over time, the growth of residential property in this country is amazing. There's no reason why that won't continue. This chart, AMP put out this chart earlier this year, and they're suggesting that residential property around Australia is about 13% of trend. It could even be a little bit higher than that now that we're at the end of the year. So it wouldn't be unreasonable for, who knows, no one's got a crystal ball per se, but it wouldn't be unreasonable to see a flat period of growth for 4 or 5 years, which might be the normal property cycle for residential property in the main capital cities around Australia. If you take a long-term view, well, I don't think there's anything to worry about, as this chart suggests. If you're wanting to buy property now and you're happy for it to be flat for a few years, that's great. If not, if you're still looking for growth but want to buy property, it might be worth looking, I don't know, regional areas, maybe in Brisbane, or maybe looking for something that's old and run down that you can add a bit of value to with a bit of a renovation. So there's still options there to build your wealth, even if property is flat over the next few years. Who knows what, but it's unlikely it's going to go up the way it has done over the last few years. Yeah. So in saying that, I'd ask you to think ultra long term, and I love this quote from Warren Buffett that his favourite holding period is forever. If you hold forever, you don't have to sell, you're not paying capital gains tax. If you sell, you've got that asset appreciating, you've got income generated from that asset, and from that income then you can decide what you want to do with it, live off it, or put that into further investments. So I would encourage you, if buying property, to not worry about what's going to happen next year, 5 years from now, but if you think 20 years from now, 40 years from now, 60 years from now, it's a pretty good bet that property is going to be far higher then than what it is today. And if you take that really long-term view, well then you can start to think about your kids and your grandkids and so forth. And I think the perfect scenario for property is that property funds a portion of your income in retirement through rental payments, and then upon your passing you bequeath that asset to your adult kids who hold that asset, funds their retirement, funds their lifestyle, and hopefully then it goes on to your grandkids one day as your adult kids pass away. So I think that's the perfect scenario if you take a really long-term view. And I've got a slide here, and I'm hoping I don't go on a bit of a rant about this, but the question that I sometimes get asked is, should I take out a mortgage as principal and interest or as interest only? And I've got a bit of a smart comment there about, it depends on your goal. If you haven't really got a purpose, go with interest only, or if you want to own assets and have them pay you back principal and interest and pay down that debt, and then have that income coming in completely unencumbered. And the reason I've got this here is because I've seen a trend with property spookers and people out in the marketplace over the last few years, rightly so. Property's been moving up, And there's been a lot of encouragement in the marketplace to take out interest-only loans. And even for your own home, just to not pay off any of it, just to have an interest-only loan. And the reason people are advocating that is lowers your cost of living. It means you can afford more property, your serviceability to buy the next property is easier. And then they're encouraging people to take on more properties, buy the next one with interest-only loans. But now if we're at a point where perhaps, as the AMP chart shows, you might be at a sort of a point where property might not go up, it can put people in a precarious position if interest rates move up. I think it is a great strategy, that interest only, if property prices are moving up, but then you need to change that strategy if it's going to be flat for a period of time. So just something to be considerate of. Swinburne University put out a report about 2 months ago, it was published in the Guardian newspaper, which said that you should buy your own home by the age of 45. Not own your own home, but at least purchase a home by the age of 45. And the report was quite frightening. It suggested that people are vulnerable to life events such as redundancy, the breakdown of a marriage, or perhaps a health problem like a heart attack or a stroke. Because if you haven't bought your home, theoretically you're renting. Most people are struggling to get by if they're renting. If you haven't got that equity in your home, you have that life event, maybe you're made redundant, all of a sudden you haven't got an income coming in, then the next step is, unfortunately, you're in a precarious position where you might get turfed out of your rental accommodation. So all of a sudden you've got no job and you've got no home. And that's where the report sort of suggested there's devastating and potentially insurmountable effects, because it can happen that way. So property isn't just about growing wealth, it's about giving you security and de-risking your life, taking control of that. So the next building block to wealth is superannuation, and it's probably more important than many people give it credit for. And the reason why it's important is because our employers have to put 9.5% of our income into superannuation each year. And by the year 2025, that's going to become 12%. So super is going to become even more important part of your life. And what I'd like to ask people, I might even ask you, do you regularly not care about where 9.5% of your income goes each year? No. But with superannuation, for some reason, people don't seem to care as much, particularly when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, it doesn't seem to hit people's radar. I might ask you, does anyone here have a self-managed super fund? Do a couple, yeah? Is there any reason, why did you sort of go with... is there any reasons why you set a self-managed super fund up?
I had 3% return last year, so I thought I can do better, and I moved.
Absolutely. Do you want to add to that, Cherie? Or?
Yeah, it's the same thing. We thought as well that we could grow our wealth much better in the strategies that we were thinking of in a self-managed, so that's why we chose to, and because we had an amount in there that was viable to be able to set up a self-managed.
Absolutely, yeah, most definitely. And there is definitely a trend towards people setting up their own self-managed super fund, become the trustees of their own fund, and for those reasons, you can control it, more flexible, you think you can get better returns, you can. And so savvy people have gone and done that, and then now there's people turning to do that. But in a way, they want to be the trustees of their fund, but they don't know what to do next. So then they're turning to advisors like myself to manage those investment decisions and help take control of that. So in a way, I think it should really be called advisor managed super rather than self-managed, but self-managed creates its onus, and it's all about you, and you've got to know what you're doing, where you can have that safety net of someone helping you, hold your hand along the way. Now, I've got a couple of quick questions here, a couple of ways to assess if your super is doing well. Now, we have to put 9.5% of our money into super, as we know. So it makes sense, particularly for people under the age of about 50, that if 9.5%, let's say 10% from our numbers of our money is going into super, well, theoretically our super balance should be at least 10% of the money we've earned in our lifetime. So you can do a quick calculation and roughly go, okay, well, how much have I earned in my working life? Is that more than 10% or is that less than 10% of my income that I've earned in my life? And if your super balance is less than 10%, well, it's probably a sign that you need to look at it and a bit more closely and perhaps give it some attention. Yeah. And the second step here is, no matter where you are in life, some people are retired here, but if you're still working and have superannuation that you're accumulating, is to then take the next step and then extrapolate out, particularly if you don't have other investments, how much money you're going to have by the time you retire, and then how much are you wanting to live off in retirement, and then figure out how long it's going to last. So I've got some numbers here on the whiteboard for men and for women, and these are statistics from the Australian Bureau of Statistics from 2014, so they are 2 years old. And what they show is that men aged 60 to 64, and then similarly women aged 60 to 64, had a balance at retirement as an average of $292,500 for men and $138,150 for women. And yet their average income in the year before they retired was bit over 72,000 for men, 57,000 for women. So if you divide 292 by 72, anyone decent in maths would roughly know that that's about 4 years worth of your current income. And sure, there's tax in that. And for women, about 2.5 years of your income. So if you're wanting to retire at 65, looking at that, you haven't got many years on your current lifestyle, your current spending to cover yourself. So something's got to give. You probably just go spend it and then be broke for the rest of your life, or really curtail how much you're spending and limit your income in retirement. So just something to consider, that it is more important than people, and this is the reason why when you get to that age, it becomes very important. Any questions? Olga, any questions on that? No? Okay. Next building block is to be debt-free as soon as possible, and the reason for that is it gives you options. It gives you options. If you own your own home, which gives you that safety, that security, then you've got plenty of options with your income to invest it into income-producing assets and look at other strategies to maximise your wealth and accelerate where you are to where you want to be. And there's another good reason at the moment to be paying down debt, and that's because the charts are showing, global markets are starting to show that interest rates are turning up. I've got a chart here it's a monthly chart of the 10-year bond rate in the US, and bond rates basically in the US control interest rates. So if bond rates move up, interest rates move down and vice versa. So it might be a little bit hard to see, but this is a monthly chart, so there's candlesticks on this chart going back to 1984, and a red candlestick means that the bond price has gone down in that month, and a green one means that the bond price has gone up for a month. But the trend is certainly up. Is there anyone here that can recall back in the 80s having a mortgage of 18% interest rates, that sort of thing? Well, that's over in this section here where bond rates were low in the 80s, and ever since it's pretty much been an upward march up until this point here. So we had 18% interest rates 30 years ago, and now they're virtually at zero in the US. And the US Federal Reserve, most likely, it's pretty much priced in that they're going to increase interest rates in December. That's pretty much guaranteed now that that's going to happen. The market has priced that in. And so what we can see at the very end here over on this chart, and this has happened since Donald Trump has been elected, that bond prices have fallen. So interest rates are moving from very low levels, they're heading towards a higher level. It's an inverse relationship. Does that make sense? And the reason why interest rates are moving up is because inflation's starting to show. Donald Trump's got inflationary policies. He's going to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. That's inflationary, and he's going to reduce taxes. So both of those things are very inflationary for the US economy, which is going to, I believe, flow into the global economy over time. Australia's behind the curve on that. We're not quite getting lapped, but we're definitely behind the curve on that. But it's likely that we'll have interest rate increases in Australia over the next maybe 12 months or so. So the next chart shows the same 10-year US bond, but a shorter time frame, going back to just around that GFC. And we can see that with the GFC, the Federal Reserve and central banks around the world started printing lots of money and reducing interest rates, and as a result, bond prices went up from top left to bottom left to top right. But interestingly, I've got a bit of a trend line here. You can see here from the end of 2013 or so push it out to the end of 2016. And again, since Donald Trump was elected that week, the bond price fell through what I consider that as an upward trend. So we're no longer in an upward trend for bond prices, which means we're no longer in a trend of low interest rates. We're now heading towards a trend of high interest rates. It doesn't mean it's going to be significantly catastrophic or anything, it's just something to be aware of. And as a result, to get back to the original point, I think it's a good time to be paying down debt if you can put surplus income into paying down debt. And interestingly enough, if we look back to this AMP chart, that the trend of upper property prices has pretty much mirrored the trend in lower interest rates or the trend in higher bond prices. There's something interesting there, and it is very much linked and related. Now, insurance is an important one. It's really about protecting your family and making sure that you can achieve your goals, or your family can achieve your goals, even if something were to go wrong. And these are some, I guess, statistics that aren't the nicest to hear, but they're true. That 9 out of every 10 of us, 90% of us, are going to suffer from one of 4 conditions in our lifetimes. It's either going to be a heart attack, stroke, diabetes, or cancer. That's the reality. And they're either going to take us, these conditions will either take us out of the workforce for a period of time, or in the worst case scenario, end our life. So if they were to end our life permanently, which means ending our income permanently, or even temporarily, isn't it worth insuring against to make sure that your family's goals, even if the worst case scenarios happen, can still be achieved, and you're protecting your family if you were no longer here. Does that make sense? And talking about assets related to insurance, when I sit down with clients that are of that insurance age below 60, insurers won't insure people, say, for life insurance or income protection beyond the age of 60. But if you're below that age, I ask people, what's your biggest asset? And invariably they say, oh, it's my house. And in this example, it's $800,000. Okay, well, that's fair enough. You got any other assets? My car. Yeah, okay. What's your car worth? $30,000 to hold it. Yeah, okay. Any other assets you got? Oh, I guess I've got lots of furniture. And I guess my contents are assets. Yeah, okay. And I ask people, what about yourself? Are you an asset? And they often go, yeah, I guess so. Why are you an asset? Oh, because I have income. I'm educated. I'm a good worker. I'm intelligent, and I've got many years to earn that income. Oh yeah, that's right. So in this scenario, if you're 40 years of age, you're earning $100,000 per annum as a number, and you want to retire at age 65, you've got 25 years of work, and are you going to earn roughly $100,000 a year? Well, yeah, I guess so. Well, 25 years times $100,000 is $2.5 million. So you insure your house, yeah. You insure your contents, yeah. Insure your car, yeah. Why wouldn't you insure yourself? Very important, and that's the way to protect your family and to protect, I guess, those goals that you have. Now, the next building blocks of wealth is shares, and I do spend a lot of time looking at the share market, and I think it creates a balanced portfolio. They are seen as risky assets by many people, and the work I do is involved around minimising the risk as much as possible in the share market. And interestingly enough, another chart here from AMP Capital, that the share market trend is also your friend. It pretty much mirrors the property trend over the last 100 years. And in a way it makes sense, because the people that are buying property are also the people that run businesses, that have investments, that put money into the share market. And we're all trying to do a little bit better, we're all trying to be that little bit more productive, which increases the GDP, which increases asset prices over time, and businesses looking to create value through their goods and services, growing value as well. So it makes sense that they kind of mirror each other. And to confirm this trend here, I've got a chart of the US share market going back to 1950 to the current day, and actually I did print this off about 2 weeks ago. It shows the red candlestick there for this is a quarterly chart. So again, red moves are down for the quarter, green moves are up for the quarter. We're actually about 2,200 points as of tonight in the US S&P 500, so it's actually a green candle, and it's actually a good quarter at the moment. But what I'd like to point out is this little, I'm not sure if you can see this little eclipse here. This is the 1987 crash, which was a massive deal at the time, where share prices fell by about 50% in a matter of about 6 or 7 weeks. But that sowed the seeds for the next bull market, which went on to the year 2000. And as you can see, the low at the 1987 crash was in the low 200-point range, the S&P 500, but now at 2,200 points. So it's pretty much gone tenfold in asset value in 30 years. So in some respects, shares are risky to own, but in some respects, they're risky not to own, because you can miss out on those gains. Any questions there? No, so this is how I go about minimising risk in the share market, and I've adapted a little bit, but it's pretty much the same principle that Warren Buffett uses. He spends all his days reading annual reports, studying the economy, studying various businesses, mostly in America, and he wants to understand them very well, and then he figures out what he wants to buy, and then when the time is right, he buys into those businesses, and that's what he's done over 50 years. And he's now at a point himself where his business has got like $70 billion of cash, and he can't spend it quick enough. More comes in, has about $1 billion coming in each month. He just can't spend it quick enough in investment. So it's a good problem to have for him, I guess. But the process is to look at the total set of businesses in the stock market. And on your way, you stand good, sorry. And there's about 2,000 businesses listed on the market in Australia, but only 500 of them are profitable, believe it or not. There's lots of little ones that are little mining exploration companies digging for oil, for gold, for copper. They're just drilling holes in the ground looking for stuff. They burn through their cash, they go back to the market and raise more capital and then go and do it again. And then even if they strike oil, for instance, it's going to take them so many years to develop a mine, millions and millions of dollars and years of time waiting for that mine to be up and running and producing oil or copper or gold or whatever it is. So they don't add a lot of value to these businesses, but I guess they employ people. So that's a benefit to the economy. So in looking at the share market, we want to narrow down to what are the best businesses on the market. Only 500 of them make a profit above 0%. Only 100 of them make a profit or a return on equity of 15% per annum. Does everyone understand what that means, or is that worth me explaining to anyone at all? No? Okay. Only 60 of them, only 3% of the 2,000 make a profit of over 20% per annum. And there's some of those 60 are even have just had a one-off year where maybe they've had a one-off profit, maybe they've sold a division, they've got some extra profits, or maybe they've had won a contract which is a one-off, where next year their profits aren't going to be as high as what they've been. So when we back out companies like that, and companies with really high debts, or companies that also might report a profit but actually report a statutory, like a cash flow negative situation, when we remove some of those, we're left with about 40 businesses on the market, or the top 2%, the best quality business on the market. So we understand or that's how I do it, I understand what I want to buy and when we want to buy them. And those 40 remaining businesses all have high profits, and they have little or no debt, positive cash flow, they pay good dividends, income to the shareholders, and have bright prospects for the future. The reasons why they're good now look set to continue for the foreseeable future. So by narrowing it down to the best quality businesses and showing that the share market moves up over time, can't help but do well if we put together a portfolio of maybe 10 or 15, 20, 25 of these businesses out of these top 40 companies. So we're getting there, guys. Budgeting is a key building block, I believe, on the way to wealth. And budgeting is all about looking at your income and trying to trap as much of that surplus income above your expenses. And then once you've trapped that income, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to perhaps pay down debt, salary sacrifice some of that into superannuation, which I'll get into in a moment, or put that money into income-producing assets such as property or shares, or maybe a combination of both? And I love this quote. Has anyone here read The Richest Man in Babylon, the book by George S. Clason? Yeah. It's probably my favourite book on investing. I would highly recommend you read it. And the quote I love from this book, and it is repeated a few times, is that part of all you earn is yours to keep. And the book goes on a story about how the richest man in Babylon sits down 100 people and says, how much money do you keep? Well, I'm a steward maker, I earn this much money, I earn this much money, I keep this much. And then he says, but your pockets are empty at the end of the month, so how much do you really keep? And then the penny drops. So they realise they've got to put some of that money away up front so that they don't fritter it away. So I'd encourage you, to stick to a budget and then look to maximise what you're going to do with that money. Government's help. No one really likes the government, but it can help us. It can help us with a structure called superannuation, which is, as I pointed out before, many people don't really care about it, but it is a great way, particularly once you own your own home, maybe not so much once you're still paying off your home, but once you own your own home and you've got options, salary sacrificing your income into super is a great way to boost your superannuation balance and reduce your taxable income at the same time. So the superannuation changes have come into effect this week. They've changed twice in the past 6 months, but they've now gone through Parliament and they're official. And on the 1st of July 2017, if you wanted to salary sacrifice part of your income as a low tax contribution into super, the maximum anyone's going to be able to put in is $25,000 now, which is lower than what it was. But if you happen to be on the highest tax rate, there's different tax rates there, but if you're paying 45%, 45% tax bracket, by putting $25,000 of your income, your high income, into super, you can save $7,000 or over $7,000 in income tax, and then also boost your super balance by more than $20,000 after the 15 or 16.5% super contribution tax comes out. Does that make sense to people? Yeah. So it can be a great way to boost your retirement and boost those numbers so that you're going to have a more comfortable retirement and give you more choices as you get to that point. And the last building block is to tick off your estate planning. Have you got a will in place? If you've had significant changes, have you reviewed it regularly? It's maybe worth doing that. And this is all about what your wishes are, to make sure having a will in place so that if something was to go wrong, your wishes are seen, someone's not making a decision for you as to who, I guess, inherits your income or your wealth. And in terms of estate planning, I've seen a bit of a trend, and maybe it's because I had a stand at the Property Buyers Expo back in October, which was very property-centric, sort of clientele coming to speak to me at the booth. But a number of people have looked to set up discretionary trusts. And the main reason the people at this Property Expo were looking to do so is to avoid land tax. They love property in Sydney, they believe it long term it's fundamentally going to do well. But they've bought a few properties and at that point where they're going to start paying land tax if they buy the next property. So they want to create another entity to minimise or take that land tax back to zero for that entity so that you can buy another set of properties in another entity being a discretionary trust. So tax minimisation or land tax has been the driver for the people that have given me this inquiry over the last couple of months. But aside from avoiding land tax, there is a couple of other really good benefits, and one is that income from a trust can be distributed to any of the beneficiaries or any of the people involved in the trust. So if one spouse has got a very high income, one's got a low income, you can distribute income in that year to the spouse with a lower income, and if, say, that change next year, well, you can flexibly distribute income from the trust from those assets to the other person or even to adult kids, or there's a whole range of things you can do. And then upon your passing, the assets are very easily transferred to the beneficiaries or, say, your adult kids or people you want to be part of that trust. So it's a good way to, again, completely rule out any capital gains tax on your passing, or who knows what will happen in the future. So just something to maybe keep in mind, might be a good way to go for you in the future.
I was going to ask that then, in the area that you set up a discretionary trust, if on your passing, are they subject to standard laws with wills and things like that?
Well, the trust is not. So the trust is, I guess, outside the will in that sense. So the beneficiaries, so you would control that. This has been beneficial. Some building blocks to wealth. owning property, perhaps investment properties, maximise your superannuation, pay down your debts, have the right insurance cover in place to protect your family, diversify a little bit into the share market, just a little bit, doesn't have to be a lot, but a little bit, stick to a budget, and then with that surplus income, put that into income producing assets or pay down debt. Minimise tax through superannuation where you can, and have that will in place. And I think if you can do each of those things to the best of your ability, despite what your circumstances are or where they are, you're going to give yourself the best chance to an early retirement, a comfortable retirement. Have any questions on